Okay, so now still looking at the economics aspect of our plan design or the process design economics. We are depreciation now. So let's see. So when you talk about depreciation, right? So you have a certain equipment where in your plant, right? As the years goes by, the thing will be depreciated. So the amount that the original price you bought the equipment will not cost the same thing when the thing takes about 5 years or 10 years or something, right? It won't cost the same, right? Because of depreciation, right? So over here, if you take the first question, you can see what they said that we have an initial price, right, of a construction equipment is what 3 million, right? So 3 million, right? Having a useful life of 10 years, right? So the useful life, that's the number of years, right? Uh, the equipment work at its capacity. Then you have what you call the estimated salvage value, right? So the salvage value, VSVS, right over here is 450,000, right? They are in Ghana cities, right? So for they said that we should estimate the value of the construction equipment at the end of the fifth year using the straight line method. So with the straight line method, which is very easy, the depreciation for the straight line method is the original or the initial value or initial cost minus the salvage whereby was the useful life or the service life or yeah or the shelf life. So over here we have 3 million minus 450,000 then divided by 10, right? So over here gives us um this gives us 200 255,000 Ghana cedis. So that's the depreciation for the straight line method. This is the formula. So over here we need to find the book value, right, at the end of the fifth year. So V5, right, that's the book value at the end of the fifth year, right, which gives us the V minus what? A times D, right, where A is equals to the year, right, the year you're calculating the thing in. So the V is 3 million minus, so the A is 5, then multiply by the D, which is 255,000 Ghana cedis. So that means that the book value at the end of the fifth year gives us 1,725,000. Yeah, 1,725,000. Right. So there is the book value. So that's for the straight line method. And if you can see the II is saying that we should use the double declining method to also calculate for the book value at the end of the fifth year, right? So for double declining method, you have to find this factor, right? Which gives us 1 minus the salvage value divided by the initial cost to the power 1 over n. Over here, we get 450,000 divided by 3 million to the power 1 over 10. That's just useful life, right? So this gives me 0.1728, right? So from here, I can calculate for the book value, right, at the fifth year. You get the book value. So which is V5, which is given by V minus V times 1 minus F, right? Over here, I'll have the 3 million multiplied by 1 minus, so it's to the power 5, right? So the actual formula is VA is equal to V1 minus F to the power E, right? So over here, the F is 0.17 to E to the power 5. Over here, this gives us a value of 1,160,914 Ghana cedis, right? So this is the book value also at the end of what? The fifth year when we use the double declining method, right? And it told us to I told us to calculate for the depreciation for the fifth year using the double declining method. So the depreciation for the fifth year, right, becomes what's the V4 minus what's the V5, right? So we need to find V4 and V5. So V5 is what we actually calculated for in II. So the V4 gives me 3 million, right, then 1 minus 0.1728 to the power 4, and this gives me 1,404,635 Ghana cedis, right? So I need to find D5. So if I do the subtraction, that gives me 242,721, right? So 242,721, right? Ghana cedis, right? So I have that amount over here. Is you get it? I have that amount. So that's for D5, right? And then next one, which is the IV, says that we should calculate for, we should use the sum of years digits, right? So the sum of years, you need to find how you call the arithmetic sum, right? So you need to find what you call the arithmetic sum, which is n plus 1 divided by 2, right? So over here, the n over there is 10, right? So plus 1 divided by 2. So this one gives me 55. That's for the arithmetic sum, right? Then we need to find the depreciation for the first year. So D1, right? So for the first year becomes is n divided by the arithmetic sum, then v minus what, vs. If you go to the second year, it's n minus 1. If you go to the third year, it's n minus 2. Yeah, that way. So over here it becomes 10 over 55. Then so the v minus vs, right? When I do v minus vs, it gives me um this, right? So it gives me 2,550,000, right? So that's the difference. So that gives me that one. So the depreciation for the first year becomes 463,636, right? Ghana cedis. Then for depreciation for the second year comes n minus 1, which is 9 by 55 times 2, 5, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one, so at the end of the second year is 417,272, right? 273. Then for the third year, which is 8 divided by 55, then 255, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So at the end of the third year, so it gives me 370909. Then at the end of the fourth year, we will have 7, right, over 55. So at the end of the fourth year, I have 3, 2, 4, 5, 4, 5. Right, so say 5, 4, 6. Then at the end of the fifth year, right, so at the end of the fifth year, I'll have 6 divided by 55. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So at the end of the fifth year, I'll be getting 278. Right, so I'll be getting 278, 181. Let's say 182. Right, they are in Ghana cedis, please. Right, they are in Ghana cedis, right? Over here, I'll find my summation of what the summation of the depreciations, right? So the summation for the depreciation becomes 8545, right, 6. So 1,854,546, right? So that's the sum of the depreciations, right? So that will help me to actually calculate for the book value, right, for the at the end of the fifth year, right? So the book value gives me at the end of the fifth year gives me v minus the summation of what's the depreciations, which is 3 million minus minus this value, right? So this gives me 1,145,455, right? So this actually, so using the sum of ESDG's method. So this is what we have, right? Basically, so everything over here is formula week. So if you just know the formula to use to apply whenever you are using the straight line method, the double declining method, or textbook declining method, like sum of ESDG's method, is very easy for you to get all of these words very correctly, right? So these are the methods we can use. You have the straight line, the declining method, right? You have the double declining, textbook declining. Then you have the sum of years or digit method, right? So let's look at the third question over here, right? So the third question says that a firm purchased the heat exchanger for, so the initial amount is V, we don't know. But they gave us the salvage value of the heat exchanger after 9 years, right? So the shelf life or the service life is 9 years. It's expected to be VS. So that one we don't know. In what year will the annual depreciation amount by the sum of years digit method be equal to the annual depreciation by the straight line method for the above information? Right. So sum of years or the depreciation, the straight line, which is the depreciation is equal to this one. Then the sum of years to will have n minus e minus 1 divided by the arithmetic sum, then v minus was vs. So if we equate the two, right, but first I need to even find my sum, right, arithmetic sum, which is n plus 1 divided by 2, but my n is 9, so 9 plus 1 divided by 2, which gives me 45, right, which gives me 45. So over here, if I'm equating the two, this 9, so and n is 9. So they said I should find the number of years, right? So that's the A I'm supposed to calculate for. Yeah, so you see that the formula that we were using, we said that when it's first year, we just use n. When it's second year, it's n minus 1. It's actually coming from here. Right? When it's first year, when you put 1 over here, 1 minus 1 becomes 0. So you just left with n. When it's second year, it's 2 minus 1. So that's where the n minus 1 is coming from, right? So you have to actually know what this basic formula. As over here, this one cancels that one, right? Then you'll be left with 1 over 9, which is equal to 9 minus e minus 1 divided by 45, right? So the 45 can come here over 9. Then I have 9 minus e plus 1. Right? So the 45 over 9 gives me what, 5. And 9 plus 1 gives me 10 minus a. So a will be equal to 10 minus what, 5, right? Which is 5 years. So the number of years, right? The number of years or the number of the yeah the number of years that will actually give me, that will actually have the same depreciation using the straight line method, and the sum of years digit method is 5 years. So when we have 5 years, that means that when you use the sum of the year digits method and you use the straight line method, you actually get the same as depreciation here. So that's basically about the depreciation. So the other questions too over there, they all follow the same approach. Whether so you just have to know the method that we are using, the formulas that are associated with that method, then we can just move it from there, right? So yeah, thank you.